God kväll and välkommen till Oslo.
Good evening to you too, Terry Wogan. The 90s were a monumental time for Eurovision. The collapse of the Soviet Union and the Communist bloc meant that tons of new countries were ready to make their debut. Unfortunately, it just wasn't practical for all of them to take part together on the same night, and the EBU tried many different methods to keep the number of participants down. In 1993, there was a pre-qualifying round for all the debuting countries, even though some of them had already participated as Yugoslavia, with the top 3 qualifying for the main contest. The bottom 6 countries in 1993 got kicked out in 1994 in order to make room for some more new countries, and the bottom 7 that year got kicked out in 1995 so that the countries that got kicked out in 1994 could come back. But in 1996, the EBU opted for a different approach. They decided to have one big pre-qualifying round. Norway, the host country, was automatically given a place in the final, while 29 other countries had to battle it out for 22 spaces. Some people believe that the reason the EBU decided to do this was because Germany finished in last place in 1995, but according to the website ESCNation.com, the pre-qualifying round had already been planned before the 1995 contest and was mentioned in the official rulebook. The format for this qualifier was as follows. An 8-member jury in each participating country was sent audio for all 29 songs, and each country voted as they would in the main contest, giving 12 points to their favourite, 10 to their second favourite, and so on. The points were all added up, and the 7 countries with the least points were kicked out. Think about how ridiculous this is. Some of these singers had gone through national selections to represent their country, and they didn't even get the chance to perform in Oslo. There wasn't even any special televised show to announce who had qualified. The closest thing was when NRK, the Norwegian broadcaster, announced the running order, though the qualifiers were already known at that point. Eurovision never held an audio-only pre-qualifier again, and this is going to be a recurring theme. So many things happened in Eurovision 1996 that had never happened in Eurovision 4, and haven't happened again to this day. For a long time, we only knew the number of points each country got in the pre-qualifier, but in 2017, the full results were finally published on ESCNation.com. I'm going to briefly go through every country and song that didn't qualify, starting with the country that finished in last, and working my way from there. In last place is Romania with 11 points. Romania had a very rough time in their early years. The constant rule changes for participation meant they were forced to sit out 3 years in a row. The singer, Monica Angel, would return to Eurovision in 2002 and get Romania their first top 10 finish. Not doing much better was Israel with 12 points. While most of the country sent studio recordings to juries, Israel sent audio of a live performance. The results speak for themselves. Next up is the one and only Macedonia. This was their debut in Eurovision, and they sent Calliope, who of course returned to the contest 2 more times in the 2010s. Also receiving 14 points was Russia. For over a decade, Romania and Russia were considered countries that qualified every year, always making it to the final between 2004 and 2015/2016 respectively. But the fact that they both didn't make it to the 1996 final brings this status into question. Now we're moving on to the countries that came close to qualifying. Denmark received 22 points, and an English cover of the song made it to number 4 on the Danish charts. With 24 points is Germany, with the Eurodance song, Planet of Blue. 1996 was the only year that Germany was not in the Eurovision Grand Final. Germany is one of the biggest financial contributors to Eurovision, and it definitely planted the seeds for the creation of the Big Four, though the final nail in the coffin was France ending up in the relegation zone in 1999. And finally, Hungary. Hungary picked up 26 points and ended up tied with a country that finished 22nd, though we'll get to them later. Like Romania, Hungary had also failed to qualify in 1993. It was the end of the road for these 7 countries, but the remaining 22 got to join Norway in the grand final. The contest was held in Oslo following the victory of Nocturne. It was hosted by Morten Harket, the lead singer of and Ingvild Bryn, who is best known for
You are not allowed to give any points to your own country. Sweden tries that every year.
Each song was preceded by a postcard and a good luck message from a politician in their country. Eurovision never did this again. I'm going to talk about every song, starting with the last place and finishing with the winner. I'll try and keep things as opinion-free as possible because music is a very subjective medium, and I don't want to hinder the enjoyment of anyone who disagrees with me. One thing you'll notice very quickly are the strange Windows Movie Maker tier special effects they used this year. I'm going to play each one in a loop so you can really appreciate them. Finland sent Jasmine, a Finnish singer of Romani origin. In the song, she declares her love for someone while they take a walk at night. This song barely made it into the final, winning a tiebreaker against Hungary. Finland had received 8 points from Greece, while Hungary's highest mark was 7 points from Romania. It was a last place finish for the Finnish, only receiving 9 points. In second last place was Amila Glamochak, who appeared to be rocking a pixie cut with 2 long pigtails. Thankfully we never saw anything like that again. Bosnia also barely made it into the main contest, only qualifying by 3 points. This included 12 points from Slovenia, though the grand final jury gave them nothing. Overall, they finished the contest with 13 points. Slovenia sent Regina, who wore a striking green dress and had red hair that I assume was dyed. Another lucky qualifier, they made it in by a margin of 4 points, thanks in part to 10 points from Ireland. Slovenia received 16 points in the main show, most of which were from Croatia and Bosnia. Unlike the previous 3 entries, Spain did relatively better in the qualifying round. They made it through in 14th place by a margin of 17 points. I have made 2 videos about old editions of Eurovision, and both the Spanish entries mention feet. In the end, Spain finished in 20th place with votes from 4 countries. In 19th place with 18 points, we have France. It was the first time France sent a song with no French lyrics whatsoever and was sung entirely in Breton. Singing in Breton would have been something that never happened in Eurovision again if I hadn't put off making this video for 2 years. Next up is Slovakia. This is the only time Slovakia has ever made it through a qualifying round. They finished in 18th place, Slovakia's best finish to this day, and received votes from 4 countries. 2 of these countries, Malta and Greece, also happen to be in Slovakia's top 3. Switzerland returned to the contest. They were once one of the few countries to participate in every edition, but they got relegated in 1995 following a poor result the year before. They were the only country that year to sing in French, with the lyrics being about a woman who dumped a man and regretted it. It received 22 points and was the only song not to be in any jury's top 5. Belgium also got 22 points, but they technically finished above Switzerland because they got 12 from Spain. It was the last time Belgium sang in Dutch. 5 years later, in Eurovision 2001, songwriter accused Sweden of plagiarising this song in their entry Listen to Your Heartbeat. Yeah, there have been many more blatant cases of plagiarism in Eurovision that didn't get any legal action. The case was ended with a cash settlement. In 15th place we have Kasia Kowalska from Poland. This was the 3rd ever Polish entry, and like the previous 2, it had strong religious themes. The lyrics are about her asking someone why he hides his face and that she wants to know her sins. It failed to get the result of Poland's 2nd place debut, and to this day they still haven't come close. If we count the 1996 pre-qualifiers as one of the semi-finals, and also take into account Ukraine's debut and withdrawal, this technically means that between 2013 and 2015, Greece was the only country to have qualified every time. This year saw the return of Mariana Evstretiu, who previously took part for Greece in 1989 and finished 9th. The title of this song was We Wear Spring Clothes in the Wintertime, which is the best title for any song ever. The chorus also featured such equally rebellious lines as We solve difficult problems at night and We find new lovers on Sundays. What is up with that dancer? Iceland finished in 13th place. The song is called Shooby-Doo and translated to, well, Shooby-Doo. This country is so obsessed with localization that they control how baby names are spelled. The song has a bit of a cocktail jazz vibe, which isn't something we've seen too much of in Eurovision. The lyrics are about how famous singers all around the world use the titular shooby-doo in their songs, and she name-drops such famous singers as Ella Fitzgerald, Frank Sinatra, and Elvis Presley. Norway tried doing something similar the year after and failed spectacularly. In 12th place was Turkey, and if you can believe it, it was their joint second best position up to that point. It's now that I want to explain how Eurovision tried to limit the number of countries after 1996. Between 1997 and 2001, their method was to measure the average number of points each country had received in the last 4 and later 5 editions. For example, Israel had received 4 points in 1993 and 81 points in 1995, making their average score 42.5. The countries with the lowest average results had to sit out for one edition, but they were allowed to come back the year after. Turkey received 57 points in 1996, which brought their average up to 29.33 and narrowly secured them a place in the 1997 contest. Şebnem Pakad would of course come back and get Turkey a long-awaited 3rd place, forever changing the country's Eurovision fortunes. Austria sent a gospel song in Vorarlbergisch, a dialect spoken in the Austrian state of Vorarlberg. It isn't the only time Austria sang in a local dialect, they also did so in 1971, 2003 and 2012, but those were all Bavarian dialects. This was the only Eurovision entry to have been sung in Alemannic. Alemannic is the collective name for a number of German dialects, including most of the ones in Switzerland. They have about as much in common with Standard German as Dutch, and should probably be considered a separate language, but they're not really used in a formal written setting. Malta got 68 points, the same as Austria, but they technically placed ahead because they received 2 sets of 10. This was the second year in a row that Malta tied for 10th place, barely holding on to their top 10 streak that would last 8 years. Malta received 2 sets of 12 from Croatia and Slovakia, and 2 sets of 10 from Turkey and Spain. All of these countries were in the Maltese jury's top 6. Make of that what you will. In 9th place was Cyprus with Monogiamas by Konstantinos. This song was Go the Distance before Go the Distance. Konstantinos would return to the contest 2 more times in 2002 and 2005. In 8th place was the UK with Gina G and the very subtly titled Ooh, Ah, Just a Little Bit. This song holds the distinction of being the only entry in Eurovision 1996 that actually sounds like it's from 1996. For most of Eurovision's history, the music has almost been a caricature of what was popular at the time. The 70s was full of happy clapping pop songs, the 80s had a lot of synthesizer, the early 2000s had bubblegum pop, and insert whatever genre defines the 2010s. But Eurovision in the mid-90s was a very different story. This was a time when manufactured boy bands and Eurodance were dominating the charts across Europe. But Eurovision was really embracing ethnic ballads. There were some upbeat pop songs, but even those didn't tend to get caught in the time period. The only real Eurodance effort up to this point was Germany's 1994 entry, Wie Given a Party, which got a solid 3rd place, so it is surprising that more countries didn't follow in their footsteps. This was the last Eurovision where music was required to be performed live, and to get around this, they brought computers and DJ equipment on stage to play the track. Ooh Ah, Just a Little Bit was the last Eurovision entry to top the British charts, though others have come close. Netherlands finished in 7th place with Maxine and Franklin Brown. Fun fact, between 1990 and 1998, Netherlands consistently finished outside the top 10 with white singers and inside the top 10 with singers of colour. This is a rather upbeat offering about 2 long-lost lovers reconnecting and reminiscing about old times. Franklin Brown worked as a police officer in Rotterdam, but was fired after multiple female colleagues accused him of sexual assault. Alle agenten zijn klotzakken. Despite narrowly making it through the pre-qualifying round by a margin of 6 points, Portugal finished in 6th place, which was their best position up to that point. The performer is Lucia Moniz, who you may know for starring opposite Colin Firth in Love Actually. Portugal was unfortunately not destined to continue an upward trajectory, as the following year they would come in last place with 0 points. Now we enter the top 5, kicking it off with Estonia. Estonia had a very dodgy start to their Eurovision career, failing to make it past the 1993 pre-qualification round, scoring a mere 2 points in 1994 and getting relegated in 1995. But in 1996, they turned things around with Kolo Kehel by Maria Lisilus and Ivo Lena. Maria holds the distinction of being the last 15-year-old to take part in the main Eurovision Song Contest. At the time, the rule was that 15-year-olds could participate if their 16th birthday fell in that year. In 2004, this rule was amended so that all participants had to be 16 or over on the day of the contest. She would return the following year on her own and finish in 7th place. Ivo is notable for performing at the 1988 Rock Summer Festival in Tallinn and singing the 5 patriotic songs, a collection of music that became a staple of Estonia's singing revolution, in reference to how protests against the USSR in the Baltic states leading up to independence were characterised by people singing songs in defiance of the Moscow government. Estonia would remain one of the stars of Eurovision for the next few years, including a victory in 2001, though this light wouldn't burn for too long. Maja Blaudan represented Croatia with Sveta Ljubav, which you may remember from Eurovision 2014's segment For the Highest Note. Like Portugal, Croatia barely made it through the pre-qualification round, but enjoyed a much greater reception on the live stage. 4th place remains the country's best position to this day, though it would be equalled by Doris Dragovic in 1999. Croatia would go on to become one of only 3 non-Big Four countries to never get relegated, along with Sweden and Malta. Now we have reached the podium. Sweden sent the duo one more time with the song Den Vilda, translating to the Wild One. Yes, there was once a time when Sweden sent songs in Swedish. They would of course abandon the language when given a choice in the matter. Sweden won the pre-qualification round with 227 points, but in the live show they had a slow start on the scoreboard, only receiving points from one of the first 7 juries. But they managed to make up for it and ended in 3rd place with 100 points. The host country, Norway, finished in 2nd place with 114 points. They were represented by Elisabeth Andreasen, who took part in Eurovision for the 4th and final time. She previously represented Sweden in 1982 as part of Chips, sang alongside the late Jan Werner Danielsen in 1994, and scored Norway their first victory in 1985 as part of Bobby Sox. This entry holds the distinction of being the only Eurovision runner-up not to receive any points of 12, though they did receive 10 points from Sweden after their neighbour infamously blanked Nocturne the previous year.
And you know, we Norwegians are still very excited about one thing. Will Sweden give us any points this year?
I am the voice in the wind and the pouring rain. I am the voice of your hunger and your pain.
And finally, we have the winner, Emer Quinn with the Celtic tune The Voice. Winning by a landslide with 162 points, this was Ireland's 7th and so far last victory, a record that was equalled by Sweden in 2023. Emer Quinn was 23 years old when she took part in the contest. The composer, Brendan Graham, chose Emer to sing the song after watching her perform in the vocal group Anuna. When the song was submitted to RTE, it was originally recorded by Dervish, who would go on to represent Ireland in Eurovision 2007 and become a national embarrassment. Ireland was doing exceedingly well at Eurovision up to this point. Between 1992 and 1994, we won 3 contests in a row, and in 1995, the fantastic Fionnuala Sherry would play first fiddle for Norway's winning entry. In 1997, Ireland would follow in Norway's footsteps and finish in 2nd place as host, but has since to secure a single top 5 position in the contest. Ireland has only qualified for the grand final once since 2013. You'd think they'd use the TV licence money to get better acts. After all the songs and the interval act had performed, it was time for the results. 1996 finally saw an end to Ireland's Microsoft Excel scoreboards, and in its place was a futuristic CGI board floating about on a blue screen backdrop. This is the only time Eurovision ever did something like this, and I don't understand why. It looks cool as hell, and with the recent and controversial revival of virtual reality technology, now's the time to do it again. The first country to vote was Turkey. Netherlands had the distinction of receiving the first point of the evening, while the Brits had a lukewarm response at receiving 3.
United Kingdom, 3 points.
United Kingdom, 3 points. Le Royaume-Uni, 3 points.
Yeah, get used to that disappointment, imperialist scum. Third to vote was Spain, who awarded 2 points to Czechoslovakia and 6 points to Holland, which Ingvild misheard as Poland. After they were done, the scoreboard was led by Malta and Cyprus, who would gradually slip down as the voting proceeded. Croatia also led for a while through some more of the early votes, but by the 9th voter, Switzerland, Ireland jumped into first place and maintained it until the voting was over. The last voter was Sweden. Spokesperson was confronted by Ingvild over Sweden's past track record of voting.
Just wait a minute, Ulla, because I have to tell you something that
Ingvild's a nice girl.
the statistics show that over the years we have given you Swedes 156 points, while you have given us only 82.
I see.
So you
We'll
owe
see
us...
if we can change that tonight.
Yes, because you owe us 76 points, so maybe we can get them tonight.
The Swedish jury gave their 12 points to Estonia, depriving Portugal of a long-anticipated top 5 finish at the last minute. Just wait another couple of decades. Not only were there so many unique things about this contest, it was also the last contest before Eurovision really started to make permanent changes that transformed the contest for good. In 1997, the rules on backing tracks were relaxed, and some countries introduced televoting. In 1998, televoting was used by all but 3 countries. 1999 marked the end of the orchestra, and countries were allowed to sing in whatever language they liked for the first time in over 2 decades. For better or for worse, the Eurovision of the 2000s was a fundamentally different contest from what it had been before. In many ways, 1996 was the end of an era.
12 points goes to Sweden.